Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Gregory Gorgas. He's the president and CEO of Artelo Biosciences. The website is artelobio.com. And we're going to be talking about modulating the endocannabinoid system, which we'll get into. So, Greg, thanks for coming.
Well, it's great to be with you today, Rich.
Yeah, so what is the endocannabinoid system in people? What does it do? And, cannabinoid sounds related to hemp and or, marijuana. So let me know.
Absolutely. Happy to answer that question. And in fact, even though I had 30 years of biopharmaceutical drug development before initiating or starting Artelo, it was a new term to me. I'd obviously heard of cannabis or cannabinoids, but really understanding this endocannabinoid system was a new field for me. And that's part of the excitement that I had actually in helping found the company. Because you and I were born with an endocannabinoid system. Our endocannabinoid system presumably has been functioning well for us. And when I read a quote that the NIH said in 2013 that this modulation of this endocannabinoid system could affect a wide range of diseases. And when I read the extensive list of that wide range, I was so impressed, and I said, there's a treasure trove of drug development opportunity based upon modulation. In fact, I put their quote up on our website. It was so seminal. This endocannabinoid system is a family of receptors and neurotransmitters that form a biochemical communication network throughout your body, and do regulate things such as sleep. It has impact on fertility, some immune functions, and regulates a lot of biological processes, including impact on anxiety and things of that nature. So I really thought there's a drug development opportunity here. It's an untapped potential, and I became very enthusiastic about modulating this endocannabinoid.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What modulates it preferentially? Naturally, what do we encounter that modulates the system? What kind of substances or foods?
I appreciate you bringing that up, Rich. So this endocannabinoid system was first identified by Dr. Raphael Mechoulam out of Israel about 3 decades ago. And what he was trying to find out is on when someone ingests cannabis or partakes in cannabis, what receptors are being affected in the body. And so when he found these receptors, that what led him to discover this powerful system throughout the body. But that system did not exist originally for cannabis. That system exists because your body makes its own self-made chemicals. We call them endocannabinoids, or self-made cannabinoids, that target these receptors of the endocannabinoid. It just so happens that the plant mimics what your body already makes and can exogenously or from outside the body affect what your body's trying to do for itself.
That makes sense. Okay. I mean, I guess that's a common mechanism. That's how viruses and bacteria and foods and plants and all that affect people or other creatures. So they somehow know that.
Well, it's not unusual to think that something taken in from outside the body would affect one of the body's natural systems. In fact, that's exactly what's happening. And so we call it the endocannabinoid system, partly because Dr. Mechoulam was thinking about where does cannabis or cannabinoids, these chemicals that come out of cannabis, target throughout the body. But it was then discovered that your body makes its own self-made cannabinoid.
Well, under what physiological circumstances does your body make, the endocannabinoids, and when they do hit the receptors, what does that do for you?
Well, again, it's a powerful communication system throughout your body, and it's usually as a response to inflammation or stress, anxiety, or some external stimulus that is for which our body would naturally want to have a defense against or address in some positive way, and that's the body's own system that would address that. Sometimes that system gets overwhelmed, and that's where we think about delivering a chemical from outside the body to assist the body in dealing with that stress or stimulus that's outside the body. The unique aspect about our company, Artelo Biosciences, is that we are a full-spectrum endocannabinoid modulation company, meaning that when I went out to learn about this system, I found that researchers, reputable researchers from universities and places throughout the world, were targeting 3 ways to modulate this endohuman health, and that was to deliver naturally occurring cannabinoids or chemicals can come from, and that would be one that everybody would sort of easily put their mind around and understand. But the pharmaceutical industry has been making chemicals for many, many years that can either mimic or can target the receptors of the endocannabinoid. And third, there are ways through protein inhibition to regulate exactly what your body's doing, perhaps maybe efficiently in certain circumstances. And we are the only company, to my knowledge, that has a naturally occurring cannabinoid development program, a synthetic or small molecule that is rationally designed that targets the receptors, and a protein inhibitor called a fatty acid binding protein 5 inhibitor that helps regulate and modulate lipid signaling and regulate endocannabinoids.
Well, how many different cannabinoids are there, and what's the difference in function if one binds versus another?
Well, when we look at the endocannabinoid system in a very simplistic way, I'll just share that you can think of an on switch or an off switch or an agonist or an antagonist of these receptors. And there are well over 100 different chemicals that have been identified out of the cannabis plant. There's in some reports 113, and that's oftentimes a number that's quoted on the internet, but some have said yet that to be discovered or well characterized, but there may be up to 600 different chemicals that can be identified out of the cannabis. Principally, when we think about therapeutics today, we're thinking about 2 chemicals outside the body, and that's cannabidiol, or it's commonly, or THC, and those are 2 chemicals that have been identified out of the cannabis plant. Internally to the body, the endocannabinoids, the 2 principal ones, are anandamide and 2-AG, and these 2 chemicals are analogous to THC.
Right. What happens if you take CBD or if you take what's supposedly a full spectrum, type product? Are they really full spectrum according to your testing, what you've seen out there? And depending on the mix of endocannabinoids that you provide to somebody, through small molecules or through natural products, what can you modulate? What is it your goal to modulate? Are you coming out with a suite of products for certain purposes?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rich. So again, we have 3 programs in development, and I can't necessarily speak to the development programs that others have, but I'm very familiar with ours. So if I might share with you, we make one of our programs is a small molecule that was originally identified at AstraZeneca through a screen of about 75,000 compounds, and this is in mechanism very similar to THC, in that it is believed to be responsible as an agonist, as a full agonist to the CB1 and receptors, the main receptors. And as a full agonist, and by the way, THC is a partial agonist, as a full agonist, it wouldn't be surprising that we have a tremendous appetite stimulation observed with our drug. And it's been in 5 phase 1 studies, 200 regulated drug development studies. And so we know the profile of the drug. So we know that it has a profound impact on appetite stimulant. But the beauty of our drug, as opposed to THC, is that it does not target the receptor in the brain. It avoids the central, and so you avoid the euphoria or the high. And I'm not speaking about where there might be an attraction to THC from the recreational standpoint, but certainly from the medicinal perspective, if you're looking to stimulate appetite and you want to avoid the euphoria or the high while you're sick and undergoing cancer, then in fact the profile of our drug will be considered superior, because you can get all the medicinal benefit, let's say, for appetite stimulant from the gut region to stimulate appetite below the neck, and not the psychoactivity above the neck. So that would be one compare or contrast that we would have with our compound versus something that's isolated or extracted from the cannabis plant. And so real elegant opportunity, I would say, from Artelo Biosciences for that particular condition. And where we're applying that, I might just continue to add, where we're applying that is where we a big unmet need with anorexia cancer. I don't know if you know this, but 6 out of every 10 late-stage cancer, people suffering from cancer suffer from profound anorexia that contributes to their demise or waste.
Cachexia, I guess, right?
Yeah, cachexia is the muscle waste. Anorexia is the appetite loss and weight loss. But if we can return that appetite and have people participate with their families, participate in their drug therapy or biological therapy, and we can help them have a functioning body so that their immune can work better, we impact not only on their well-being, but maybe eventually an increase in longevity. We'll have to wait and see how the data bear out on that, but we do know that folks that are able to maintain their weight tend to live longer than suffer.
Yeah. Well, in the market, I mean, you have a lot of purveyors, and they're making all kinds of claims. I could see that you're staying in a very different part of the market, more medical side, and the application you're going for is great. The cancer patients definitely need all the help they can get, anorexic people. But when you survey, though, the current market, the current claims and products, where else do you see an opportunity to really help people in addition to what you're doing?
Well, so that's one area with one of our assets, and that's our Artelo 2713, which we have going into a safety lead into a phase 2 study in cancer anorexia, and we're very excited about the data there. But we have 2 other development programs. One of them is a naturally occurring cannabinoid known as CBD, and CBD is very attractive for its known anti-anxiety and anti-inflammatory properties. And in fact, there is a regulatory pathway that has been paved by Pharmaceuticals because in June of 2018, their C product called Epidiolex was approved for 2 rare forms of childhood epilepsy, and the only active ingredient in our compound. So there's a lot of reasons to like it. We looked at CD, though, and said, could we get better? We believe we have addressed some of the limitations and have made a more pharmaceutically elegant compound in a solid form. And in fact, we applied for a patent on our improvement. And in March of this year, we received the first and only issued patent on a composition of C that gives us protection. We developed this compound December of 2038. And what's important for that is not only do we have a superior compound, and the FDA will eventually be the arbitrator of whether it's safe and more efficacious, but from the elegance that we've built in, we know it's more stable, believe it's going to be in its absorption, and what we've done is we've taken the inherent differences in the different shapes of the naturally occurring CD and turned it in single shape, which delivers that for us. And then with a patent-protected compound, we're able to go in and develop it for diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease or for symptoms that are associated with PTSD, for the anxiety or sleeplessness. But in contrast to over-the-counter or CBD that someone might be able to take, we have made a more pharmaceutically elegant product that will have more consistent delivery, and in the presence of drug-drug interactions emerging and known through the co-administration with other drugs, we believe we're going to have an edge for physicians to make decisions on giving this product. So we're pretty excited about the pharmaceutical elegance that Artelo is leading with our version.
Yeah, and you also distance yourself even further from anything that could or could not happen with natural CBD products.
Yeah, and again, we believe there's room for both. There may be some CBD as people have taken for non-serious or life-threatening conditions over the counter, and I have family members that do that, and I'm supportive of those activities to the extent that their state allows for it, and they and their physician or their election, that makes sense. But for serious and life-threatening conditions such as epilepsy or schizophrenia or Parkinson's or inflammatory bowel disease, PTSD, these are conditions in which there's often a co-administration of another drug, and the pharmaceutical elegance that Artelo has with our product, I think, plus the consistency and purity and that the ability to trust the compound that the FDA has reviewed and saying is safe and efficacious.
Yeah. What clears, once an endocannabinoid binds, what clears it from a receptor and why?
That's a science question that is above the CEO's pay grade, and I would have to defer to some of the scientists, some of the leading endocannabinoid specialists on our. We have a professor of cannabinoid research, Dr. Joel Sullivan, came out of the University of Nottingham. We have another PhD scientist, Dr. Andy Yates, that got his PhD at the University of Nottingham and is a registered pharmacist in the UK. These are some of the experts that are advisors on our. I've never asked them that question, so I can't answer that question to your audience.
Okay.
But be happy to get back to you on a separate podcast someday. And
we should ask them later, and they'll say, "Who told you that?"
They will, and they'll say that's something you should know. But we stay on the topic of regulated drug development. I think that I can help.
No problem. Well, the reason why I ask is you mentioned protein inhibitors. I don't know their role or if that's even relevant, but go ahead.
Yes, very specifically, when anandamide, one of your self-made cannabinoids, it comes inside of your cell, there is a protein called the fatty acid binding protein, in our case, number 5. Your body has 9 of them. Number 5 will chaperone that anandamide, saying you don't belong here inside the cell, and we'll take it to a lipase or a hydrolase called fatty acid hydrolase, and will destroy the anandamide. And so there was belief that if we can then, and the NIH gave about $4 million in research money to Stony Brook University in New York to help them develop a inhibitor to this fatty acid binding protein 5, so that you would never chaperone that for destruction and thereby allow the accumulation of this anandamide in the body to deal with things such as inflammation and pain. And the data look very, very interesting from a preclinical perspective that Stony Brook developed on the back, again, of NIH and their own research initiative. And so that protein inhibitor looks very, very interesting for helping regulate the body's own endocannabinoid in situations of pain. And where we also saw is that this fatty acid binding protein 5 is part of a signaling mechanism for fatty acids that would go to the nuclear receptor and stimulate a vascular endothelial growth factor that would help in angiogenesis, or the formation of new blood vessels, and the growth, and it stimulates the growth and migration of cancer. And interrupting that signaling mechanism appears to have a very profound effect when in situations where fatty acid binding protein 5 appears to be upregulated, and that's in breast and prostate cancer. And when we saw that data, either alone or in combination with the standard of care in preclinical research, we said that is the first and highest priority of the company to develop in a cancer space. And so that's what we've done with that third program. So again, as a full spectrum company, we have the synthetic, rationally designed small molecule that targets as a full agonist the cannabinoid 1, cannabinoid 2 receptors. We have a naturally occurring cannabinoid called cannabidiol that we have made pharmaceutically more elegant, and we believe that eventually that is going to lead to superior data in efficacy and safety in the regulated drug development for important diseases. And then this third asset that we have, the fatty acid binding protein 5 inhibitor, initially we're developing that as part of the lipid signal for cancer, but it has growth and upside opportunity as an anti-inflammatory and as an anti-pain drug. And we're excited to see where the data will take us with that third asset.
Yeah, because some of the uses of your products will be for life-threatening illness, is there a fast track to get approval to get through clinical trials and get this out into the market soon?
Yeah, there may be, and we have not yet applied for that, so I can't say that we have fast track status. But these are important assets within the company, and we will use every regulatory advantage that we can as we move forward in diseases. If that is in rare and orphan diseases, we'll apply for orphan drug status, and if it is in large and major for which we have breakthrough status or fast track, we'll apply for concession.
Yeah, maybe eligible for compassionate use or a bunch of fast track options. Just what came to mind.
Absolutely, we're excited about about what we can accomplish with all three of these.
Is there any consideration to the effects on men versus women, or by age, or what about the microbiome? I mean, you may not know, but because the endocannabinoid system is so pervasive and important in the human body, there's probably a microbiome effect, depending on the state of someone's microbiome. So are you able to look at that, or is there just too much to look at and consider even with what you're doing?
We don't have any data to date to suggest any of our assets work in one gender versus another, or any specific aspects to that. So for example, hormone-driven cancers, for example, with our fatty acid binding protein 5 inhibitor, two come to mind. One is prostate cancer and one is breast cancer. And I know that men can have breast cancer more often than women. And so in both of these hormonally driven cancers, it looks like our drug would be applied depending on what type of, with respect to CBD, I'm not aware of any specific gender-based differences in what the drug is likely to treatment effect. There may be, and it's just outside of my knowledge, but we haven't seen.
Yeah, I just mentioned it because I never hear of drugs being developed that consider, the hormonal cycle of women or the hormonal status of a person. Or, again, like I said, it appears that the microbiome appears to modulate a lot of conditions. So I guess there's only so much you can consider, but I just wondered if there's any data on that you're looking at, or if not, not.
Yeah, it was, like I said, I don't have any specific data on one of our drugs applying to female versus male.
Okay, and what do you think will be what's to come in the next year or a couple of years? What's the product that's nearest completion, nearest approval?
Well, in our hands, the drug for the full agonist to the cannabinoid 1 and cannabinoid 2 receptor, that's our lead clinical program, and that is going through a safety lead-in 18 people, and then it'll go into a randomized phase 2 study. And then it's just one click away, maybe one or two studies in phase 3 or pivotal studies that we could bring to the FDA or EMA in Europe or the MHRA in the UK to seek regulatory approval. So for us, that's the lead development program. That's the nearest coming to the market. Our earlier stage programs are preclinical in nature, and we're aiming to, throughout this year and next year, do the regulatory studies so that we can have that into the clinic in early 2022 or late 2021, and then it'll go through a normal drug development process. It's too early to tell at this point in time, and it would be false precision to offer how many years that may take and whether it would have breakthrough status and what indications and how big the studies are. It just is not something that we would understand at this point in time. But generally that process takes anywhere from 5 to 7 years before the drug gets eventually.
Yeah, no problem. What's the best way for listeners to keep track of your progress?
Well, we do have a website, artelobio.com, ARTELOBIO.com, and that's one way to keep track of our progress. We typically keep a current corporate presentation online. There are several videos that have me or one of our scientists explaining our development programs, and those videos are available under the media tab for our. We are a public company. We are on the NASDAQ, and so and we're current in all of our filings, and so one could look up under the SEC or a convenient link on the investors page of our website to all of our public filings, and then that's where people also keep track of the progress.
Very good. Well, Greg, thanks for coming on, and it sounds like this will be a fantastic suite of products when they're ready, so I appreciate you being here.
We're excited about this. When I first learned about the endocannabinoid system, one of the things I had to do was weave between, misperceptions and misinformation on that in my research, and it was really nice to see eventually that one could really get a clear understanding of the endocannabinoid system, that the people now that are associated with developing pharmaceuticals, that's experience is maturing, the data is maturing, and I think that if we look towards the future, we're going to be talking less about mechanisms, and we're going to have these as mainstream opportunities for us. We'll have more product approvals because the pipeline is being filled not only with our compounds, but other companies that are of similar focus. And I think that companies like ourselves that are part of the land grab, someone has said, what do you feel like today? I said, I feel like Apple in the mid-'80s, and I feel like we're, grabbing intellectual property and that we're at the early stages, but I believe that it's very, very bright for companies like ours that have the vision and can anticipate and can live and sort of learn from those that have paved the way before us and leapfrog opportunities. So thank you very much, Rich, for the opportunity to share with you. And again, if anybody wants to learn more about it, it's artelobio.com. We're happy to have that conversation. Materials will provide it out.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.